And I'm not gonna lie, I really welled up hearing that information because that was the key that made me step over the precipice. Because I didn't want to die, Dave. Right? So, and the crazy thing is, she was wrong.
Floyd, how did you find carnivore?
Well, Dave, I've been thinking about this question as a subscriber. Like, man, how did I find carnivore? And to be honest, it goes back to secondary school. So in secondary school, I discovered that I had a lot of food intolerances. And one of the major ones, which is weird because I'm Maori and famously Maori eat fish. And when I was living in Japan, I found out that I was allergic to fish. Very, very violently allergic. And living in a small place called Gamarogori that was mostly fishing made that a little bit difficult. So I was just basically stuck with having katsu because I found like beef was really hard to come by. So chicken seemed to be the the staple really that I could find. I kind of got bored of chicken by the time I left my stint in Japan, but it was kind of my only option. We tried like introducing little bits of it, so my host family would be like, "Let's try a little bit and see if like a little bit's okay." A little bit was not okay. So I had an anaphylactic episode for the first time ever in my life. I remember eating fish, and then I remember waking up in a hospital. Now, thankfully, my mother, bless her cotton socks, had given me traveler's insurance because she's like, "Look, Floyd, you're clumsy. Something's going to happen there. So I'm going to get you travel insurance." So it was all covered, thankfully, and it was just really wild because I grew up around seafood. I never liked it, but I grew up around it, right? But there were times in my childhood where I'd bring it up. So not anaphylaxis, but I would bring it up. So I had an aversion to fish, but only fish because I love mussels. But I think that's the only seafood I actually like. I think as a child, I thought I liked crab, but it was that fake stuff. I can't remember what it's called, like shirimi or whatever it is, the fake crab. So I was actually liking fake food, which seems to be the case for a lot of people nowadays. Fake food seems to be something we're addicted to, and I very much was. But in secondary school, um, throughout that time, I worked out a lot. I was into boxing, heavily into boxing. So I was in pretty decent shape, and I walked 8 hours every Saturday and Sunday. So 8 hours on both days, 16 hours on the weekend, which sounds boring. But I grew up in a very beautiful town. It's like 20% town, 80% rural. It's beautiful. It's not. I wouldn't say it's rural by any stretch of the imagination because it's a trade port. But like you go like 20 minutes out of town and you're in a forest. So beautiful. So I go on those walks. But as soon as I left secondary school and went to do tertiary in a big city, I packed on the pounds immediately, instantly, like within a couple of months. And I was really shocked because I'm like, man, I've been fit for like 6 years, like jacked for 6 years. What the heck's going on? So I tried to exercise more, but the more I tried to exercise, the less I wanted to do it. And it was very strange because I was addicted to working out. Um, so it was really strange. I just wanted to do it less and less. The interesting thing uh, is I also, and I'll try and censor this for YouTube algorithm, but I started to want to delete myself, and that started at the end of secondary school. So this like constant thought of wanting to do it, which was so scary to me because I had a very cheery persona and wasn't a fake cheery. I'd say I'm a pretty positive guy, but I couldn't get rid of this thought, and I couldn't think of where it came from. Yeah, I wouldn't say I had the starriest childhood by any stretch of the imagination, but I came to terms with that pretty early on in my teenage years. I was like, look, it happened. Just come on, bro. Let's just move on. And I did. So I don't think that's where that was coming from. I have no idea where this was coming from. But listening to some of the stories shared on your channel and on other carnivore content, it's the bad food, right? So I'm but at the time I didn't know, right? I'm just like, I'm just getting fat. And then I was like, look, I don't care anymore. It was really strange. I stopped caring about my health. And then I went from somebody who worked out a lot to somebody who was like, working out sucks. I think one of the main reasons working out began to suck is I started not being able to use my nose to breathe. I became a mouth breather, and that's something I never had before ever. I was fit. I used my nose to breathe because that's how you're supposed to breathe. But I couldn't anymore. So I started seeing doctors, and they were like, "You've just got hay fever. All right. You didn't have it when you were growing up, so you just have hay fever because we've got different trees in Wellington." That's where I moved to from Gisborne, was to Wellington. I was like, okay. And I don't know anything about biology. So I was like, okay, you guys are the experts. So I'll just keep having hay fever medication. And the dosages got bigger and the hay fever never went away. And I kept putting on the pounds. And so I'm struggling to exercise because I can't breathe. I don't want to exercise because it's too much effort. And it was just hurting. And I was getting in so much pain. And I was just getting fatter and fatter and fatter and fatter. And it just, I hated looking at myself. And that skyrocketed the self deletion. It went to the stratosphere. And all I could think about was, what's the way out? Right? What's the way out of this? And in that time from secondary up to when I started gaining heaps of weight, when I was still in shape, I met my now wife 16 years ago, my now wife girlfriend at the time. And, she stuck with me. I'm really surprised she stuck with me through all the health things because, we're only dating at the time. And she's got a stronger metal than I was ever made out of. And she stuck with me through it to try and find answers, and we never found them. Um, and I just became the fat IT guy because I reskilled into IT because she was like, look, because I moved to Wellington for arts. I was a performance artist. And she was like, look, I'm loving that for you, but you kind of need to pay the bills. So I got a job. Oh, yeah, sorry, I started reskilling into IT, and the spiral happened because my job became I sat. So I've been working standing because I was working in a cafe up until then, and then in retail, so you're on your feet the whole time, which I think kept some of the massive weight gain at bay. But the moment I started working at a desk, I just became Jabba the Hutt. I ballooned and I ballooned, and I hated seeing myself. So I made sure to never stand in front of a mirror, ever, not ever stand in front of a mirror. And I got to 175 kgs. Yeah, yeah. So I couldn't breathe. It was a struggle to breathe. I sounded like Darth Vader. Hello, how can I help you on your computer today? Luke, I am your father. And I was really struggling with my mental health, my physical health. And when you can't breathe, because I've looked into this, when you can't breathe properly, it actually massively affects your mental health. So there's a lot of research into it. If you can't breathe correctly, your mental health plummets off a cliff. And because basically what will happen is you'll get apnea, which I did have. And when you have apnea, it raises cortisol. Cortisol's the stress hormone. You're not going to be feeling too great. And what's one of the number one famous killers for males? Stress-related heart attacks. So I was like, okay, cool, awesome. I'm in a bad way. And I kept trying to find answers. The whole time I was trying to find answers because I was like, look, the stronger the hay fever medication gets, nothing's working. So it worked for a little bit, and then it would just stop working. And they had nasal steroids, but I'd start bleeding, like profusely bleeding out of my nose. Then I'd get headaches, which would put me in a bad mood. So I was never in a good mood because of the medicine. I can't breathe. I've got blood coming out of my nose. I'm on medicine that's not doing anything. I'm getting pretty angry. And I've gone from this like cherry in shape guy to this constantly bitter person who is now faking being happy, which is never a good thing. So I'm faking being happy. I'm not happy. And faking being happy makes it worse. I don't know why it makes it worse. I haven't looked into it. I probably should, but it made it worse. I hated that I was faking being happy when I wasn't happy. And then when you bring up that you're not happy to other people, they really actually don't care. It's a strange like phenomenon. I don't know if it's just like a New Zealand thing, but people don't care. And it's funny because you see all these like advertisements online like men need to start talking up about mental health. But the moment you do, no one cares. So that really like threw me for a loop because, you know, in New Zealand, we've got this thing called Movember. So you grow a mustache to promote like awareness around men's mental health. But even in Movember, no one cares. Harden up. You're a man. Cool. Awesome. Hardening up isn't working. What's the next step? There isn't one ever. You just need to harden up. So it becomes circular logic, right? How do I harden up? By hardening up. What? That's not an answer. So I'm constantly falling down the spiral, and I've always wanted to be a father. So my wife and I were trying, but you know, I'm very hopelessly unwell. So my chances of being fertile are pretty much rock bottom. So I was like, screw it. I'm going to start exercising again. And it was hard work. Weirdly enough, we saw a Chinese medicine person, and they were giving me all this like yucky stuff to drink, horrible yucky stuff to drink. But I actually genuinely felt better. For the first time ever, some medicine was actually helping me feel good. So I started exercising again, but then it stopped working. And the Chinese doctor was like, look, I don't know what else to give you because I've given you the best of the best and you're still not feeling great. So my wife and I went through the IVF route, and thankfully that worked. But I didn't feel good because I knew we could have had that naturally if I was a fit. So that sent me even further down the spiral. But once daughter was here, I was like, hey, man, you need to step up. So I kept trying to find answers. And everyone would just say, you've just got hay fever. You've just got hay fever. You've got hay fever. Then I got the diagnosis from hell: diabetes, type 2. And previously to that, a couple of years before that, I was told to give up meat. And it's funny because a couple of your interviewees have been told the key to health is giving up meat. I gave up meat and I rapidly declined. And I thought it was just I wasn't putting enough effort to be healthy. It's not the giving up the meat that's the problem. It's I'm not trying to be healthy enough. So I was like mind gaming myself to believe that it would one day work, and it never did. And now I've got because I was pre-diabetic and then I was diabetic, and I was like, okay, so I've been told to eat this pre-diabetic diet, you know, heaps of grains, which I now know is absolutely horrendously bad for you, but I didn't at the time because I was told by the experts that it would stop me from becoming actually full-blown diabetic, and it didn't. And I was full-blown diabetic. I had all these blood tests, and like, no, definitely you've got the markers for a meat allergy. So I just believed them, right? Because I don't know, I didn't go to medical school. What do I know? I'm just some guy who works on a computer. So, you know, it's the news of doom. I'm a dad now. I don't want to die, right? Because I've just got the most important gift a person can ever have. What do I do now? So I'm searching for answers still. And thankfully, I started working at a government organization, and my manager was like, hey, I don't want to be rude, but you're really unwell. I was like, oh, okay. And we grew up in the same area. So the way we talked, we could just be open like that. And he was just like, look, I'm going to turn you into Arnold. So he actually paid for my gym membership while he was my manager, and took me to the gym. And so I got re-addicted to it. I still struggled to breathe, but I had somebody like pushing me positively. Because a lot of people who try to push you at the gym are like, come on, man, do it. And I don't respond well to that. I'm just like, cool, you've made it uninteresting now. Well done. So I'm, exercising again, and he's got me eating lean chicken because I've been told to give up red meat, only red meat. So I could have lean chicken from time to time, but I still wasn't doing that. And I was eating vegan beef, which I now know is just lamb-made bollocks, like lab-made bollocks rather. So I was like, okay, cool. So I've been eating like literally fake food, invented food, more invented than broccoli is. I was like, wow, now I know that. But at the time I was like, I'm doing the right thing. And the thing was, is I was getting big arms, but nothing was happening with my fat. And I was getting heavier. I was freaking out. So I'd bounce between 182 and 175. So I'd bounce there. And I was just being told muscle weighs more than fat. Okay, cool. But I'm still not losing my gut. And I'd measure my gut and it wasn't changing shape. The size was remaining constant. Now, a good thing was it wasn't getting bigger, but it wasn't coming down. So I'm stuck in this sort of, I don't know, haze of like, am I doing the right thing? And then now I was getting angry at going to the gym again. So I did the silliest thing. I started taking supplements that make you like overly energized. So we had this product called Ripped Freak, which got banned because it turns out it kills you. But they changed the recipe. But when it was first introduced, it did get banned. So they had to change the recipe. But that was the only way I could go to the gym because it was becoming a chore and the breathing was still making it difficult to work out. So I was taking essentially drugs that I was now addicted to do the thing that I wanted to do anyway. So I really actually didn't have an answer. The good thing is I could exercise now. The bad thing is I could exercise because I was filling myself with drugs. Great, awesome. Not the smart way to go. But don't worry, it's all plant extracts. So you don't need a pharmaceutical prescription for it. You can just buy it over the counter. Cool, it's still a drug, right? It's raising all of my hormone levels to try and get me to become a beast. And the one of the other side effects for this product was it makes you like kind of grumpy. So the positivity part hadn't come back. And when you're a new parent, the last thing you need is something making you agitated, right? So I realized I was becoming a massive jerk. I was like, I'm coming off these drugs. And it made going to the gym hard, but I still wanted to go to the gym because I wanted to be alive for my kid. So the negative thoughts came back with vengeance because you're not good enough, is what I kept telling myself. And then the self-deletion came back. And I was like, this sucks. I don't want to self-delete. I've got a kid that he's looking after. Like, what? And people are always like, oh, it isn't. You can't escape it. It's not you. Your brain is filled with all this crud that's telling you to do dumb stuff, right? And it's outside of your hands, which is frustrating to think about. Like, you are outside control of you? What? But you are. And I've been asking my GP for years to send me to an ENT. And they're like, no, it's just hay fever. You don't need to see an ENT. Please. I want to see an ENT. Well, I left the role where I had the manager paying for my gym's prescription membership. And I joined a company that had massive health cover. Now, the frustrating thing for me is I shouldn't need that massive health cover because in New Zealand, even without massive health cover, you can get referred by your GP to a specialist because it will just be subsidized mostly by the government. So I didn't need this cover. But now that I had it, my GP's tune instantly changed. And he was like, oh, yeah, you can go see an ENT now. That thing I've been asking for a decade. So I'm finally allowed to see an ENT. And he tries to put an endoscope up my nose. And he can't. And I just saw his eyes. Like this, he's a very professional man, very holds himself together. And just seeing this man who was so professional go, I was like sort of scared. And he said, Mr. Norman, I need you to take this paper to the other end of this clinic and tell them that you were sent by me. And then you need to come back to me. So it's the other end. It was radiology. They put me in the machine. It scanned my skull. I went back and saw him. And he said, do you want the good news first or the bad news first? And I was like, let's always go with the bad news. Like, bad news, you're dying. And I was just shocked. And he's like, good news, I'm the best ENT in New Zealand. And he showed me a scan of my head and a scan of another person's skull of the same age. And he said, this is a normal male skull. Scan. This is what the sinus should look like. See how it's empty? This is your scan. And it was completely grey. And he said, you're riddled with tumours. You've never had hay fever. You never have had hay fever. And you are not allergic to meat. And he goes, and I want to tell you right now, you are not the first Maori or Polynesian man I've seen that's had that exact same diagnosis and come to me too late. Now, the good thing is I can save you, but there are some people, it's just too late. So he got me he put me ahead of some other people who needed lesser surgeries, right, who needed like just like correction, like rhino, I think it's called rhinoplasty, to correct their noses. He put me ahead of that, and I was put under, and my company paid for the whole thing. So I had my face, and the cool thing is I can't see any scarring, but they took my nose off and then did my whole sinuses and put my nose back on. The problem was the first time I went to go have this operation, I almost died. When I woke up, I felt like $1,000,000. And I was like, how did it go? And he was like, honestly, bad. You almost died on my operating table. And I felt euphoric, even when he was telling me this bad news. I was like, okay, why do I feel so good about that? He's like, we had to give you medical cocaine to cauterize the wound, or you would have died on my operating table. I'm like, oh, wow, that's really bad. But I'm high as a kite. And he said, look, you're going to be in unbelievable amounts of pain, but we need to talk about your diet when you come off the high. So I slept it off for 18 hours. And then I woke up 18 hours later, and a nurse called for him to come in. He came in and he said, I've got a question. Your wife's Chinese, right? Yeah. Would you say you eat Chinese today? Yes. You need to stop eating ginger, garlic, and onion today. And he told me the reason I almost died on the operating table is because I ate so much of those particular plants that it's totally thinned my blood. And I had no idea about this. And this was the first time I was being told plants are bad for you. But he had only told me certain plants were, this family. I was like, okay, all right. So I didn't eat any other food for 3 months. I went back. The operation was a success. And he said, look, you'll be in unbelievable pain. I never was. I was never in pain. Maybe he was doing that thing that some people do. Was it overpromise, underdeliver? You're going to be in pain, but I absolutely never was. I just felt like somebody had their finger up my nose, and just this nostril. But my other nostril, for the first time in 11 years, I could breathe with my nose. And it blew my mind because I realized I'd been lied to that whole time. So I changed my GP that exact day. I called up a local clinic and I was like, look, I know you're more expensive, but can I be on your books, please? And they got really high ratings. So I was like, okay, let's go on their books. And I'll bring them up later because they surprised me in a very positive way. After my recovery, he said, look, because you haven't breathed through your nose for such a long time, and you know you've got here that you've got head issues with your bowels, because I hadn't been able to go number twos properly for that whole time. I've been very overweight, and it got even worse when I was told to give up red meat. Right, fiber's good for you though, right, Dave? And so I've been eating this meat. I've been eating this way, and he's like, "Look, you can put red meat back in your diet. I bet that's going to be happy for you. You're a gizzy boy. You'll want to be eating that." And with that exact day, my wife. Oh, seriously, I cannot thank my wife enough. She is one of the strongest people I know. She went and bought me 2 T-bones, and I sat down and ate them with the biggest smile on my face I've ever had. Like, oh, sorry, no, an even bigger smile was when my daughter was born, so it was the second biggest smile I've ever had. Um, and I ate those steaks. I just felt like $1,000,000, and I felt like $1,000,000 for days after. Now, I could chalk that up to just being able to breathe through my nose, and that definitely was helping because I instantly started feeling positive again. Because I could sleep the whole night as well, instead of waking up choking on my spit every hour. Because I was breathing here the correct way. But my ENT had also, and also the meat, I think, raised my happiness as well. But my ENT, who's amazing. Guys, if you're in Wellington and you need a great ENT, Dr. Simon Richardson, okay? He is the man. He taught me this thing called mewing, which sounds make-believe. But he said, because you breathe through your mouth for so long, your jaw's back here, which it was, and your teeth are all crowded. I used to have a perfect smile. Now our teeth are all crowded. And he said, this will sound really bizarre, but I want you to put your tongue in the roof of your mouth always at all times and naturally bring your teeth forward and consciously bring your teeth forward. And since I've started doing that, I've never snored once. Not a single time. Considering I share a room with my wife, she can concur the snoring has stopped. As I don't think she's had a decent sleep in a decade, bless her cotton socks. So I'm on this road to recovery, but my number 2 problem hasn't gone away, and it's gotten worse. And I talked to him about it. And he's like, look, I know nothing about the gut, but I know a great gut specialist and I can refer you. So he referred me to a gut specialist who has since moved to Australia. Dave, your folks need to stop stealing all of our good medical stuff. But I went and saw her, and she was like, "Hey, I see here that you were medically asked to be vegetarian for a very long period of time, and you're Maori." I was like, "Yep." She was like, "So, with that, in fact, I want you to never eat a plant again." I looked at her like she was the stupidest person I'd ever spoken to in my life. And I was like, I cannot believe someone as qualified as Dr. Simon Richardson had me talking to her. And she said, look, I know this is going to sound bizarre, but I'm going to show you a picture. Who do you think this woman is? And it was this very large woman. I was like, I don't know, an auntie? She's like, no, that's me. And because she's Polynesian as well. And she said, look, mate, you think about it. What were our ancestors eating? Pretty much coconut, MCT oil, fish and birds, and very, very little else, and the occasional pig. I was like, okay. And she was like, look, this is going to sound really strange, but I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you some information. So she gave me this pamphlet on not eating plants. I was like, what about fruit? She was like, no, I don't think you've understood what I've said. Plants? And I was like, okay. And it was a really hard pill for me to swallow, right? Now I had decided to pick up keto to try and lose weight before seeing her, because one of my mates lost a massive amount of weight on keto. But it really wasn't giving me the results it gave him. And I was like, okay. And I was working out heaps, and I just wasn't getting the results. And he was managing to lose it when he was bedridden. He was bedridden on keto because he had shattered his leg, which thankfully is healed, but he shattered it playing footy. And I'm like, okay, this is really, really crazy. And I was worried about dying of a heart attack. And she said, it's all bullshit. Sorry, I know I shouldn't have said that. Sorry. It was all BS. And she talked to me about it, and she told me about how the food pyramid's a lie. And this is a gut specialist. I'm thinking to myself, is this lady crazy? Because as soon as she told me the food pyramid was a lie, I started to not believe a single word that started coming out of her mouth. Because I had been taught since I was very young, the food pyramid keeps you healthy. The food pyramid is a lie. And so she's left me with this information, and she said, look, I know doctors don't usually recommend you using the internet, but I want you to watch this video. And it was Dr. Ken Berry's Beginner's Guide to Carnivore that he keeps cheekily changing the year to the current year, but I think he actually recorded in 2018. But it's clever. It's good because the algorithm should be feeding people nutritional health, correct nutritional health. But I was just stunned. Now she TMI, but she gave me a colonic before I left, which actually helped relieve the pressure in my stomach because I hadn't gone number 2 for 2 months at this point. Yeah, so I was feeling pretty bad. And I went away and I talked to my wife about it, and she was just like, look, I don't believe it either. But considering how much your company's insurance paid them, I think they might know what they're talking about. So we gave it a go. And she said to me, I'm not going to say verbatim, so I'm kind of a little bit paraphrasing, but she said to me, in 4 months, you will no longer be type 2 diabetic. And I'm not going to lie, I really welled up hearing that information because that was the key that made me step over the precipice. Because I didn't want to die, Dave. Right? So, and the crazy thing is, she was wrong, but the right way around. I lost it in 3. In 3 months, it was gone. And my doctor called me. Again, I changed clinics. My GP called me. She's like, we need to talk to you about your blood work. And I was like, oh, God, this crazy diet I'm eating is killing me. My doctor brought me in and she's like, what the hell are you doing? It's awesome. Look at your markers. I was like, what? She's like, you're not diabetic. What the hell? What have you done? And I was like, oh, well, I saw this gut expert. And she was like, oh, yeah, the one from Wakefield. I'm like, yeah. She was like, oh, okay, yeah, Malia. And so we had this conversation. My doctor was like, look, keep doing it. You got rid of diabetes. I've never seen that. And she was like, and to be honest, Floyd, no one ever wants to put in the effort to get rid of the diabetes. They say they want to, they never do it. And I think that's a little bit harsh, but she showed me some stats. People say they want to do it and they don't do it. And I think, to be honest, Dave, it's diet. We've been told by Diabetes New Zealand, you got to eat your grains. They're a superfood. No, they're a super lie that someone very rich told everybody. And it opened a big can of worms for me because I started feeling great. And I was going to the gym without supplements. I was going to the gym without supplements. Now, I didn't give up the coffee, so I suppose I was having one supplement, coffee. But I was feeling great. And my muscles were getting huge. So my arms are big. But I had this problem. The gut still wasn't going. Now, I felt amazing and I wasn't going to give it up. And I could regularly go to the loo, right? So I don't feel bloated. Never, ever bloated again. Hallelujah, praise the Lord. So I've been carnivore since June last year, all because crazily enough, a medical expert told me to do it, right? And it's funny because I keep seeing a lot of stories on your channel and others where medical experts are telling them not to. But I think, to be honest, and I'm not blaming GPs and I'm not showing any shade their way because I do not blame them at all. I think they see 1,000 people a week, right? They're only given 15 minutes to see their patients and they've got to pump them out. I think they do not have the time to look at proper diagnoses and solutions, right? Now, there might be some fat cats that are just riding the gravy train that is the money of being a doctor, but I think a lot of them join the medical field because they want to help people, but they don't have the bloody time to do it because being a GP, you don't. But I go and see specialists who are probably seeing like 10 people a week. And they have the time to be like, look, I've got all this research data to back me up. I've worked on these many people. I know exactly what I'm doing. So I don't blame GPs at all. I just think there isn't enough GPs because New Zealand's got a massive medical staff drain at the moment. And they're under the pump. And they just literally 50 minutes is not enough time to find out why someone's dying, right? That's not enough time at all. There's enough time for hey, how are you? I'll catch you later. Have a good day. Right? Here's some pills because I didn't have enough time to figure out what's actually wrong with you. I don't blame them. And considering pills are covered by our government, I don't think they're peddlers either. Here in New Zealand, at least. Other countries that may be the case, but I think our government pays for it. I'm not paying for it. I'm not getting strapped for cash. It isn't hurting me in any way, but people aren't getting healed, right? So it was just really strange that I had these two medical specialists who were like, hey, I've just fixed your whole life. Have fun, kid. In fact, my auntie said, look, this is going to sound insincere, but I mean this from a great place. I never want to see you again. That's how well I think I've done with helping you, Mr. Norman. Right? And I was like, cool, awesome. And I don't think I ever will because I can breathe through my nose. And because of that trick he taught me, mewing, which it's a strange name, I know, but it's after a doctor, I believe, was called Dr. Mewing. It works. It's amazing. Right? Even if you've got a cold, you just put your tongue top of your mouth and magically your nose will open up and you can breathe even when you're sick. It's amazing. So I'm being put on this path, but I was getting jacked and I felt better, but this unlimited energy every carnivore talks about, I never got it. And it was starting to really kick my behind. I wasn't getting upset like I was when I was, eating terribly. Sorry, I was eating the pre-diabetic health association guidelines. I still felt great and my mental clarity was awesome. I've had a problem with short-term memory for a long time and that it would never get shifted to long. So it would go here and in 20 seconds it'd be gone. That's improving. It's not 100%, and my wife wished it would be, but it is definitely improving. But the rapid weight loss everybody talks about, I just wasn't getting it. And, I watched a video from Steak and Butter Gal, and she talked about I should eat more butter. But I've heard other carnivores like, don't eat more butter, it'll make you fat. So I was in this like rock and a hard place, so I stopped eating butter. And then on Steak and Butter Girl, there was this woman, Libby, she's Australian too. And she's lost like hundreds of pounds by eating tons of butter and meat, ruminant meat. And I was in this cycle of like, okay, if Libby can do it, why can't I? But I was just really worried about the weight gain of dairy. And then last month, I went to, so in September, so near the halfway through September to the halfway through to October, I went to China. Now, sticking on this diet in China was wild. Because I was staying with my wife's family and they were like, hey, I've made all these carbs for you. But thankfully, my wife had like gone ahead to all of her family because we went all over China and staying with her family, she'd gone ahead and been like, hey, my husband doesn't eat carbs. And what was interesting is they were just feeding me mostly eggs because a lot of their meats they cook in sauces, right? If you're going to have meat, it's cooked in a sauce. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. So I was just eating really eggs. And because it was so insanely hot in China, my daughter and I were sweating to the point that our clothes looked like they had been in torrential rain. And something strange was happening. I had salt crystals in my shirt. And I was like, what the hell? Have I got bad dandruff? My wife was like, no, I think that's salt. And not a good idea. I tasted it, which isn't clever since China's heavily polluted. So there's probably like smog in my shirts. But I was like, wow, that's actually salt. And I've never in my life seen that, right? I've sweated at the gym before. I've never seen salt crystals come out. Well, what was happening was I was eating eggs and butter. But also in China, when I was eating ruminant animals, they were actually fatty. So when you get a cut of meat in China, the fat's there. You get that whole animal. And meat's everywhere in China. I don't know how they've got that many animals. It's everywhere. Every street corner you go down, there's an animal hanging in a window. And you're like, okay. And so I'm eating fatty cuts of beef. Now in New Zealand, I thought I was eating fatty cuts of beef. I'd go and get my steak and make sure there was fat on it. But in China, they're eating fatty cuts of beef. And the weight started coming off. And I was blown away because I got that euphoric feeling every carnivore says they get. And once the salt stopped coming out of me, I think I finally lost my water weight. You know, a year and a half in, I think it's finally gone. And in China, I was there for a month. I lost 8 kgs in that month. Gone. I finally broke through the barrier. So, as of this morning, I am 119. And when I started my gym journey, I was 175 kgs. So I'm 119 point. Hang on, I've got a photo of it. Hold up. 119 point. 0.85. Yeah. 119.85. So yeah, down from 175 in 1.5 years being on carnivore. I was blown away.
That's
And now,
awesome.
thank you, Dave, man. It was staggering because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm getting Libby numbers. I'm getting Bill Knott numbers. Bill Knott in Alaska, I don't know if you've seen his content. Wonderful, man. Libby's wonderful too. And I just lost all this weight. And I was just absolutely flabbergasted by this experience. And it was just funny because like all it took was to be in a country where everyone eats carbs and I wasn't, but it was so boiling hot that finally I was fat adapted. Everybody talks about it. You get euphoric, right? And you feel like you've got unlimited energy, and it happened. I got unlimited energy. I couldn't believe it. And so I woke up like halfway through my China trip and I was just like, I want to go do something. I just want to go do stuff.
So, what's your diet like now, day to day?
Day to day. So after coming back from China, I actually promised myself something because I knew I wasn't going to be able to avoid carbs because we went to a restaurant. You know, her family shouted us to a restaurant. They would have cooked the meat and sauce. So I was like, I'm going to have to detox. So if you can see my screen name there, I'm on YouTube called That Random Fasting Guy because I am 13 days into a 60-day fast. And I feel incredible because now that I'm fat adapted, I'm not hungry. I tried fasting earlier in my carnivore journey. I got to day 7 and I got to day 7. I went and I bought all this mince and eggs and I smashed them back and I was like, I'll hop back on the horse. It was meant to be 21 solid days, but it became 7 and 14 because I now know I wasn't fat adapted yet. You know, I was trying to speed run something that I need to wait for. And now that my body's there, I'm 13 days into a 60-day fast, and my body's just eating my tummy. And I like this shirt before I left for China. This shirt was tight, not like I'm really too big for it tight, but like it fit me. And that's the reason I chose this shirt because this is a pre-China shirt. I feel amazing. I feel so, so good. Okay, so before I went to China, I was doing what I thought would be enough to get me fat adapted, but I wasn't eating butter. I'm now going to incorporate butter. I'm doing a butter bob fast, by the way. So butter bob, I don't know if you've ever heard of his content. He was probably, I suppose, the earliest carnivore on YouTube, really. But it was coffee and butter. So I start my morning with coffee and butter, and that's me, right? And the weight is coming off because since I came back from China, I've dropped anywhere from 100 grams to 700 grams a day. It's been absolutely wild. Um, and I've got one of these like keto breath things, and it's like very close to the danger. They've got like a danger setting, like you might be in too much ketosis. I don't know if you can be in too much ketosis, but I'm really happy to see those numbers. So yeah, before that, I was just eating steaks. So what I'll do is I'll go. We've got a bulk buyer, and I've got a membership with them because I used to run a photo restoration company. So I've got a company number. So I registered that company number, and now I'm buying meat for a photo restoration company. Um, but I can go there and I go to the frozen section because the idea for the wholesalers is they sell it fresh, right? Because restaurants don't want frozen cuts of meat. So I go to their frozen section because it's 50 to 70% off. So I'm getting like, huge, like 6 to 8 kg cuts for like 50 NZ. I think in USD, that's like 25 bucks, right? So huge cuts of meat for nothing. And then I cut them up into steaks. And I thought I was getting enough fat through that. But now, when I go back onto leaving my fast, I'll do a couple of bone broth and eggs days to get my stomach back to digesting. But I'm going to put more butter in my diet. I'm going to butter my eggs. I'm going to do butter because eating butter in China, which was like the easiest fat source I could get my hands on, that and fatty cuts of beef, I lost so much more weight. I finally became fat adapted. I feel absolutely incredible. So yeah, I think my day to day will be that. But before that, I was eating beef, I was eating eggs. I'd only do 4 eggs a day. But after eating so many eggs in China and it skyrocketed my weight loss, I'm going to increase my 4 eggs a day. I think, because there's a fella I just found. I think he's only started posting who he's been doing like a dozen eggs, and in New Zealand you can get a dozen eggs for like nothing. I've seen a couple of your commenters from the US be upset that eggs are so pricey there, which I'm sorry to hear, but in New Zealand they're so cheap, and our government has made free range the law. So caged birds is illegal now, which I'm so happy to hear because the egg tastes better, the quality of the egg is better. There's a company called Free to Roam, and they don't actually feed their chickens; they let them like eat the bugs they're supposed to eat. So if I want to eat chicken, which is very rarely, I'll buy one of their ones because their chickens are eating bugs, which they're supposed to eat. They're supposed to eat grains. So there's been a lot of push in New Zealand to increase the quality of our meat, which is funny because there's also like obviously a push from vegans here, but it's nowhere near as caught on as other countries because New Zealand's covered in cows and sheep's. We're covered in it, right? We're a meat country, and yeah, it's been good to get access to that quality of meat. But yeah, before I went to China, I wasn't eating enough fat. I've now since discovered my fat wasn't enough, and that's why I wasn't getting carnivore results. One of your interviewees once said, "You need to eat a cartoonish amount of fat to get the result," and she's right. She's right. You have to eat a cartoonish amount of fat, and so now I'm going to eat a cartoonish amount of fat after I come off my fast, and I cannot wait to see what the world's going to open up for me because I'll be healthy. And the good thing is, at the gym I've now got a personal trainer, and my results have like skyrocketed, and I'm working out fasted, which I never thought I'd be able to do. But a lot of like there's a guy called Carnivore Muscle, and that's how he prefers to do it, is work out fasted. He says his results are better, and I now have physical evidence that the results are better when I work out fasted. So now that I'm fat adapted, I'm really open to some of the other ideas out there in the carnivore community. And Steak and Butter Girl, I'm so sorry for not listening to you earlier. You were right. Butter was the answer for me. I should have listened.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank
So,
you.
there's some awesome changes, like, especially, I mean, firstly, congratulations on this. That must have been a nightmare.
Yeah, it was.
There's nothing worse than when you're forced to breathe through your mouth all the time.
Yeah.
It does horrible things to you.
Mm.
Um, and the diabetes reversing, and
Yeah.
so, like, how do people react around you to all this?
Well, the thing is, what I think I'm lucky because in New Zealand, we're a very meat centric diet culture. So when I tell people I just eat meat, they're like, "Oh yeah, must be expensive." And when I tell them that I've actually saved money, they're like, "Oh how?" And then I tell them I'm not buying snacks because I bought snacks every single day. Like I'll tell people I'm going to the gym, and I was, but it was the gym and a fruit salad and a chicken salad and a salad. But I mean, salad is full of sauce. But don't worry, it's good for your sauce, right? So yeah, and that's been the good. I've been had a lot of buy-in, but the saddest part for me is someone very important in my life, and I won't name and shame them, but they're very very important to me. They're struggling with diabetes, and every time they come and stay at my house, they'll be like, "Oh, I'm doing so well," and then they'll pull out a block of chocolate, right? And I don't blame them at all because I've been there. I've been that person, right? It's not their fault because there's people purposely designing additives to make you addicted, right? That's their job. And as evil as that job is, it got created, right? Someone had to fill it. So yeah, it hurts my soul because they're always like, "Oh, I've been told by my doctor I need to do something, or I'll get gangrene, or I'll lose a limb, or whatever it is," right? And I keep telling her, "Look at what it's doing for me," and she visits frequently, and I keep showing her my results, and I look better and better each time, and she even goes, "Oh, wow, you're doing so well." And she always goes, "I could never do that. Meat's too heavy." How is meat heavier than cake? How is meat heavier than cake?
I
It's
think that's a perspective thing, though,
yeah.
because so someone who hasn't gone over to a carnivore way of eating is
Mm,
thinking meat plus the usual things that I'm eating.
mm,
Their perspective is like an omnivorous diet, right?
yeah, yeah, for sure. And I absolutely agree. That's their perspective. But I'm just like, look, I really want you to be around for my daughter. You know, so please. And then they just ghosted me, and I was like, okay. And the thing is, I was never like over the top about it or aggressive because, as I mentioned earlier, I don't respond well to people being aggressive to try and motivate me. So I just said, look, this would be great. And yeah, it was really sad. Uh, yeah, just because like they're really important to me, and they're not doing even what their doctors are saying. The doctors are like, hey, you should probably try keto, right? And this, they mean my happiest thing about New Zealand is like our doctors are actually trying. I hear all these horror stories from some of your interviewees and other interviewees on other carnivore channels about how doctors aren't even trying. Um, but yeah, and so that they've been told, this is the key. This will help you. And I'm just like, look, the way I'm eating is like super keto, right? The keto of Krypton, like it's so powerful. So yeah, but other than that, it's been very positive. Every other person I've spoken to has responded so positively because they look at me, they ask me what I'm eating, they look at me again and go, "Cool, it works." Now that isn't to say someone's going to start doing it. One of my friends has though, but that isn't to say they're going to start doing it. Well, yeah, one of my friends was battling, and he's blast him. He was losing weight faster than me. I was like, of course you are. But it's good.
And he's stuck with it.
Yep. Yeah, he's 6 months in
Oh,
now.
awesome!
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. We're stuck with it. Yeah. And he's gone back to he's gone back to like exercising again, which is something he missed because he couldn't because he had really bad lower back pain.
So how does it work? Like working, eating with your family.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting because my because the nature of the role my wife has, she works through the night, so I'm the one doing dinner for daughter. So that's been okay. So I can just like ha- cook my daughter's meal, which we make sure to use whole foods. She's not carnivore, though I would love that. But we do focus on whole foods. But because at her school they give them Cruskits and stuff, she's addicted to it. And so when we give her whole food, she's like, "This isn't yummy. I want a cookie." And I'm like, "Whoa, this happens this young." And this is probably me. Like I'm probably looking in a mirror of young me. That's how I got to where I was, right? Is because I want a cookie. Now I'm lucky because my parents wouldn't have had the funds for a cookie because they just chose to have 5 children. So I'm very lucky. My mum actually, to be honest, is probably why I got so fit in high school. My mum fed us predominantly meat. She'd go and bulk buy meat, and we ate basically meat. And my dad was a barbecue head, still is. So we're having barbecued meat all the time, or it will be roasted in the oven. So I'm very lucky, and it's more than likely why I was so fit as a teenager because my mum was accidentally making me keto. Like, like thanks, mum. So you know that's been there. But with the wife, when we go out, my wife's awesome. She'll try and find a place that has a meat dish so that I can eat there. I does it hidden, and it kind of annoys her, and I get it because not many places are catering for health. But there's a place here, and we go there every quarter, every calendar quarter. It's a all-you-can-eat meat place. And so my wife shouts it for the family, and we go there as a family. And thankfully, my daughter loves it there. I'm so happy. Um, so that's been good. And what's really cool is they go, "Hey, is there anything you don't eat?" And so I'll be like, "Yeah, I don't eat soy and canola oil." So they'll make special cuts for just me. This place is amazing. If anybody lives in Wellington, they're called Wildfire. They're amazing. They literally will customize their menu for you. It's incredible. I cannot rate their place highly enough. They are more than 5-star quality, and the staff are amazing. They always remember. Well, I mean, they probably somebody they forget, but they always remember when we come what my restrictions are. It's incredible. So I'm treated like
That's
a
awesome.
prince, I guess. Yeah, it's really good. So
Yeah.
it's been easy to like for us to bond still as a family.
What does the future hold for you? Like, this is the path forward?
Yeah, for sure. I'll never come off it because I never want to breathe through my mouth again. I never want to be diabetic again. And I know what all of that stuff did to me. It made me unwell. Now, I got to say, being a Māori boy, I miss kumara and potatoes. That's sweet potato for anybody who doesn't know what kumara is. I miss them with my soul. But I don't crave them. That's the fascinating thing. Like I miss them from like a memory perspective, nostalgia. But my stomach doesn't go, "I want to eat that." Because I've looked at it once and my stomach's like, "And what? There's a piece of meat right over there. Go grab that." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool. All right." So I don't have to fight the feeling, which I'm very happy about. I miss peanut butter. I know peanuts aren't the best for you at all, but I do miss peanut butter and dark chocolate. I know there's some carnivores who do incorporate dark chocolate, but I know if I do that, it will open Pandora's box. And if I remember correctly, that wasn't a very positive myth.
Yeah, yeah. Same for me. I'd love a bit of dark chocolate, but I know,
Mm.
after the dark chocolate, then comes the Krispy Kreme donuts and everything else that follows it.
I've wanted to ask Dave, living in Japan, is it hard to come by ruminant meat?
No, but it's like they don't have like there's very few places you can go to get anything in bulk.
Mm.
you know so like the local supermarket, they'll have it's a really small selection of meat, and
Mm.
if it sells out at, I don't know, by 5 p.m., they don't restock it.
Yeah.
It's just like it's gone.
Yeah.
So yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's okay.
You've just reminded me of something. Sorry, Dave, to interject like that. But you've just reminded me of something. I finally managed to talk to the owner of my local supermarket. Our local supermarket has a butcher, like a proper butcher. They do the cuts themselves. They don't get like a meat delivered. And I went and spoke to him. I was like, "Look, mate, this is going to be the strangest request you've ever gotten, but I've noticed you guys chuck away your beef fat. I will buy it in bulk." And he was like, I could see the wheels turning like, this guy's going to buy my rubbish. So he took me straight to the butchery section. I now have the butchery's phone number, and which is thankfully a text number as well. And I can text order beef fat now, like proper beef fat. So I was given 2 kgs for $8 of beef fat, proper beef fat, and because I want to increase my fats, I now know that's the secret, and it was the sauce I was missing. Thanks again to one of your interviewees and to Steak and Butter Girl. You need to eat a cartoonish amount of fat. So when my fast finishes, I will have fat for days, which I'm so excited about. So yeah, I've thankfully done because another one of your interviewees mentioned like become friends with your butcher so you can get fat because they just don't sell it, and if they do sell it, it's pork fat. I want beef fat, man. I need my ruminant animals.
Someone comes to you and says, "All right, Floyd, I'm skeptical of this.
Mm.
This sounds crazy based on everything I've been told in my life, but I'm willing to give it 90 days. How do I get started with carnivore? What would you advise them?"
Well, thankfully, I have a success story in that regard. I just said to them, you need to have a why. You absolutely need to have a reason you're doing it. If you're just doing it to be chiseled by Christmas, is that important? If it is, good. Okay, that's a good starting point. I want to be jacked by Christmas. Fair enough, because Christmas is summer here. And so yeah, so you have to have and it needs to be vivid, right? You can imagine it's already happened, right? People get a little stuck up on that one, but no, you need to picture that it's already happened, because that means for your body you positively reinforce it, right, the whole way, because your body's like, oh, I'm there, right? I know what that feels like. It feels great. I want to go back there, right? It's almost in a way like addicting yourself to the idea, not negatively, of course. Nothing should ever be negative in your journey, but just imagine that state. And if that's vivid enough, then give it a go. I think if you're very sick, right, and no one's giving you an answer, this worked for me. I won't be totalitarian. I'm going to give you a couple of videos to watch. Give that a look. And if you're still like, hey, this isn't for me, that's fine. At least we had the chat.
Nice. Yeah, it's important not to be too pushy about it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
it's
it negatively impacts people's thoughts, right? Hey, Floyd's a jerk,
mm,
you know?
mm. Yeah, and, like, it's like, when you're a kid and mum's nagging you, right? It's
Yeah.
like, the more she nags, the less likely you are to do what she wants you to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for
Mm,
sure.
yeah. So how can people reach out to you?
Yeah, so I'm currently on YouTube under the tag that's next to my name, that random fasting guy. I decided to pop it onto a YouTube channel to keep me accountable, really, because I know last time I fell off the horse. This time I think it's going to be easy peasy, because I'm on day 13. I'm not hungry at all. Um, so yeah, so I've just documented my journey, how I feel. Every 5 days I do a weigh-in on camera, just so that people can see like the progress and that I'm not fibbing. It's the number one thing, right? Oh, he's probably fibbing. So yeah, that's kept me like really on the straight and narrow, and it's been positive for me. And fingers crossed, I haven't had any negative comments. There's this one American fellow who actually comments on every single video. It's like, keep going, brother. It's been awesome. So I really, really like that. It's been just, to be honest, apart from few people who are totalitarian in the community, I found carnivore's been so welcoming. But when I was like told to go vegetable based, people told me I wasn't good enough all the time. It's really strange.
Yeah, yeah, the carnival community is really good.
Yeah,
Um, I'll link to your channel below.
thank you.
Um, Floyd, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I really appreciate your time.
And Dave, seriously, thank you for everything that you do here, mate. It's really positively impacted the community.